Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and go into Blackboard and show you where I'm at. I'm in the optional resources, and I gave you a couple examples in here. I actually gave you a site plan example. I gave you an as-built for the subdivision in PDF form, and I gave you a house plan that's going to go on the lot. So just a quick example. Here's an example of what goes on a site plan, and this is for typically a builder will send you the house plans and you'll put the plans on the lot. So in other words, I'd put the house plans in and then put them on the lot where it's going to go. The only difference that I do now is that I took off where it has irons. Unless you actually survey it, you don't want those irons on there labeled EIS, because that's misleading. So it looks like you actually surveyed it. So I actually take the irons off. These are the elevations. Cumberland County typically wants a basic elevation for their lots. I take my signature and the statement out, and my address and all. I take all that out now just because this is a site plan for a building permit. Typically, you will get hired to actually stake the house. So you do actually go out there on the job and you'll stake the location of the house. But as for just to get the permit with it, I take that signature off. Later on, if I go out there and actually do the foundation survey or a survey, then I give them an updated map and it's signed and sealed by me. So just to kind of give you an idea about that. So I just take that off because it doesn't require you to actually be a surveyor to get a site plan. So I keep the information about site plan, who it's for, the subdivision, where it's recorded, and then the scale, and that's a graph scale. And then here's some of the information, the written scale, the date, whatever the township is, county and state. Doesn't say city of Fayetteville, but you can put Fayetteville, but it's still Cumberland County. Then I typically start drawing my map. Before I do anything else, I'll start putting the property line in. So I'll get the plat out and have it ready, and I'll start putting the bearings in for the property. And when I get that in, I'll label them. And then I'll go back and I'll make a layer maybe called boundary for that and keep it solid. And then I'll make a layer for the adjoiners. And then this would be adjoiners or anybody that's abutting the property. So I'll do one for adjoiners. And then I'll typically do one for the right-of-way. And the right-of-way is anything that touches the road. Even though that's technically a joiner, it touches the road, so it's a right-of-way. So you want to make that different. If we put an envelope, setback envelope, on my site plans, I typically do, that will be a layer. We've got an easement on ours, so we're going to need to make a layer for an easement because you want these all to be different so that we can put them in our legend. So typically you're going to have your site plan up here, your vicinity map up here at the top. You're going to do a legend, and I'm going to have you do it from scratch, but once we get this done, you can copy it into your next one, and all the hard work will be done. But I just want to make sure to show you how you can change, modify, or update any information. And then typically some notes that need to go on here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So right now, I have the Knolls on Cliffdale on my saved to my desktop. I actually have a hard copy right in my hand where I'm going to be working. So I'm just going to show you that. We briefly talked about yesterday about when we're looking at adjoiners. If the adjoining property, so we're lot 10, if the adjoining property has been recorded on a plat book and page with a subdivision, you can just put the lot number and the recorded information. So behind 10 you have 46, and 46 goes all the way down from 46 to, it looks like 58 is all on the same recorded map. When it changes over to 57, that is a new plat book and page. So we've got two different plat books and page that come together. So he didn't have to put the adjoiner's name or a pen number. Only if you have something that is just recorded and it's recorded in a deed book and page, then you want to put the owner's name and you want to put the pen number on there. You do not, however, want to put N/F, now or formerly. So the board says that kind of looks like you didn't actually research it. I thought it was a great idea to put now or formerly, because if you're looking at this 10 years from now and it's got who owns it and you're thinking, well, that's not who owns it now. So I like to put, I thought now or formerly looked good, you know, and then you could say, okay, but the latest one says so-and-so owns it. Well, they said they want to know who owns it at the time you record this. So take off the now or formerly. So typically now it's off all of our plats. Even I've noticed 4D doesn't put it on their plats anymore. So we normally keep heed with what the board says, keep up with it. They update the stuff, and then we usually have them come speak at some of our surveyors meetings just to make sure we don't misunderstand something, and we don't mind calling if we got a question. Alright, so you can see their legends. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and show you where the house is. So that's my optional site plan. So I'm going to look at that. Here is the plans for the subdivision. They're in the Civ Public, but they're also right here. And we actually looked at those yesterday. I don't actually have the measure tool on this particular one. In school we have it where I can measure the tool, and we actually looked at lot 10, and when I scaled it, it scaled to be about 7, but based off their notes right here, it looks like it's about 5.75 feet to the left. So that means probably the water is the same amount closest to our property. So just letting you know where you get information on. These are as-built plans that probably have been submitted to PwC. If they haven't, they've been released and they are as-built. So that's why you've got all the lining through, is because they actually change their numbers, but they don't rechange the drawing where the sewer is. So I'm probably thinking David Jackson probably knows where this sewer is and probably knows where the water is, or could find out really easily. But I'm going to go with 5.75 for this one, and then I'll probably just keep the water 10 feet away from there. That's probably close enough just to show a location on there. Alright, now to the good stuff. This is the house plans. So these are going to be the plans. You can go ahead and print them off in your computer. The house is going to face Knowles on Cliffdale. So we're going to actually put the house in. Now, here's the thing on the house plans. They normally are in feet and inches. We don't do anything in inches. So I automatically go ahead and convert these and put them into feet. So this would actually be, and you want to add both together. You don't want to break in where the center of the garage door is. No need for that. So I would just add those two together. So it's going to be 20 feet. So you got 20, 21, 19. And then you'll need to add the 5.7 and 4.5. So that would be 10, looks like. And 36 across the back. 27, but I'll go ahead and do all the way to the front of the porch because it's covered and you want to include that. So that would be 31, then we'd go 15, and then we'd go 2, then we'd go 17, and then come back up to 2. I normally go in a clockwise because when I label it, it typically labels on the inside. So I'll kind of show you that. Alright, so we're ready to start drawing. Alright, so I'm going to go into the Civil 3D. It's Imperial. And we're going to get it loaded. Shouldn't take that long, I was just in here. And I'm going to go ahead and make me a couple of layers. And then we'll make them as we need them. So I'm going to go to the home ribbons. I'll kind of talk about some of the ribbons with you right now while we're doing it. This is the main ribbon where you can get most anything that you want in CAD. Now, if you type the word menu bar, all one word, and type the number, it's set to 1. So actually I have that toolbar across the top already and it's saved. If you don't have it, go ahead and set it to 1. It was set to 0. So mine already had 1. That gives me a choice of some other ribbons across the top here. So I have File, Edit, View. I like the points one because I can view my points easily. I like the line and curves, and because it kind of tells me exactly what the line and curves are like by bearing. I like the inquiry tool. So there's a couple ones I really like. Alright, so I'm going to go to my layers. So this is different. Here's your main ones. You've got point, surface, traverse. We've got lines, curves. These are your modify. A lot of times I'll use the keyboard command to do some modifying. So I will tell you what the quick picks are for how to modify something without looking for the picture. That's got copy on it, but if I get to the one at school, it doesn't. And you can hover over it and you see what they are. So I'm going to go to layers. And it's already made out a bunch of predetermined layers that are in CAD. But I want to make my own. Alright, so I'm going to hit the, looks like the little page, the very first one, new layer. And I'm going to do maybe property. You can do property or boundary, either one. I'm going to go ahead and make my color pink. I want it to stand out. Now the color is only for you, because typically when we print in a black and white, print to PDF. So we don't send anything in color. It's just for us to differentiate. We differentiate on the site plan with how our layers are. Alright, I'm going to do adjoiners. So I'm going to do another one, and it's going to be add, A-D-J-O-I-N-E-R-S. This is, I typically do this in white, and I usually typically pull these bottom colors at the bottom because of the setting up the pen styles. Usually maybe where you work at, they'll already have that set up, but typically I just pick the bottom ones right now or for ones that I need. And the line type, if you cannot see your, like if it comes in really small and you can't see where the whole name, you can double click in between and you can see that it'll, you know, extend it all the way out so you can see what it is. So adjoiners need to be on a -2. Now we don't, these are typically ones that we can use. We can actually load some extra lines, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So I usually do -2, a dash and the word 2, and I'm going to say OK. So that's normally my adjoiner, and then I'm going to do another layer, and it's called right of way, R-I-G-H-T of way. And typically that's yellow, color 2. And the line type is a Phantom 2, Phantom 2. And so I noticed that's the same ones that 4D uses, so a lot of times we'll use some of the same ones. I normally like the ones with the 2 behind them because that makes them show up, you know, a little clearer, easier. Now I'm going to look at my scale. I'm going to look at something real quick. I've got a template drawing in my documents, I believe. Yeah. So we're going to be wanting to change it to 1 inch equals 30. So what you just saw me do, I will actually show you how to do. I just inserted a template. Now I'm not sure where that template comes into the drawing at, so we may have to zoom out, but I've got a template put in there for you guys. I exploded it. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that back out because I'll make sure. I just want to see what my scale is. So go ahead and change your scale to 1 inch equals 30 feet. Typically when I have like site plans already set up, like a template for 30, 40, and 50, and possibly 60. So once you start getting bigger than that, it's kind of hard to see. So typically I already have some set up, so I'm not reinventing the wheel. So what I'm going to do real quick while we're talking, I'm going to go ahead and bring that template into Blackboard. And I'm going to add an item. And it's going to be the site plan template. So I'll find it where I put it under my documents. And I got a bunch of stuff you can see where I scan. There. Alright, so I'll show you later on how to actually load that in. I'm not going to load it in now. I just wanted to look at it really quick. So it's in there. Alright, so I'm ready to draw. So I'm going to go ahead and set my current layer to boundary. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can either drop down and then go to, I think I called it property. I did boundary in our first class. I'm doing property and it's alphabetical. There it is. Or you can go into your layers, and when you finish making something, you can double click and it'll make it current. So double click the check mark, or you can click on it and hit the check mark up here for the little green check mark on the pages. So that's what's with CAD. There's probably 3 ways to get to the same command. Alright, so I'm going to start drawing. I've got property set current. I've got my plat out, and I'm going to create line, and I'm going to the line and curve menu across the top where we added the menu bar. create a line, and line by bearing. Now at this point, I told you once it's asking for, specify the first point. So I did 0, 0 so that it would put it right at 0 north, 0 east. So I'm looking at the plat, and the bearing across the front of the plat is northwest 77 degrees 50 minutes and 02 seconds with a distance of 75. Alright, so it's wanting me to tell what quadrant it's in. You can either, I typically will punch, because it's fourth quadrant, I'll punch 4. And then the bearing, how you enter a bearing is 77. For the degrees, you can just put a decimal point. Then for next is 50 seconds. So you've got to put 2 numbers in here. If it was 05, you'd put 05. If it's 50, put 50. And then seconds would be 02. You do not have to put another decimal point. It knows it's 77 degrees, 50 minutes, 02 seconds. So that's the good thing about that. It's easy to get that. Alright, and then distance is 75. And I'm going to go ahead and put 0.00 in. And anytime you want to get to where the extent of your project, you can double click, and I'm in a command. I'm going to keep drawing real quick because it's in another part of my drawing. Well, I'm going to double click. So you can double click the center rolling wheel, and there. It should have brought it to that line. So all I've got is the first one. So I'm going to go back now to line, create line and curves by bearing, and make sure your O snaps are on to go ahead and pick, because if you don't have to have them on if you're going to keep going, but if you're not and you get them back out, you need to make sure you snap back to where you left off. So I'm going to go between the line between 10 and 11. That is quadrant 1. It is 12 degrees, so it's 12, decimal point 0958. And my distance is 110 feet. 0.0. Alright, now I'm going from the back line that's got lot 46 on it, and that's quadrant 2. And that would be 77.50 02. So it's the same as the front is, but just the bearings. Now we're going from the front left corner, so we're going in the opposite quadrant. So we're actually going in quadrant 2. 110. Oh, 75. So let me show you. I just made a mistake. I accidentally put 75 in, and I don't want to have to erase this. You can go to line, line and curve, and the one that says extension. I can click at closest to the end, and I can see now. If you see what it's asking me, I can change, or I can put a new total. So I can hit total and tell it 75.00, and it fixed it. Alright, now most people just want to take a line and connect from here to the beginning. Don't do that, because probably 1 out of 20 times I put something in wrong, especially when I'm having to read a bunch of curve tables and everything else. So I'll always come back and put it in by bearing, and then check between where I started and where I ended to make sure. So I'm going to do create line and curves by bearing, and make sure my endpoints are on. And now this time I'm looking at the bearing, that's that 20-foot drainage easement, and it says it's north 12 degrees 09 minutes 58 seconds. Well, if I'm looking at it, north is straight up. So it can't be this quadrant, so it's got to be the opposite quadrant. So typically, when we label plats in AutoCAD, when we label them in a site plan, we do them in a clockwise. When it does it on a simultaneous plat, they normally, all the lot lines have the exact same bearings. So basically, they're going to go from top to bottom. So depending on which way you're going around the lot, just pay attention and look. Because remember, every line has two bearings depending on which point you're looking at. So I'm looking from the back to the front, so now it's in quadrant 3. So the only, I don't have to add 180 to it or anything. I'm just going to put in quadrant 3, which is opposite that one. And it is 12.0958 110. And then just hit enter to get out. Escape. Alright, and then I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to look really close and see if I can see. And a lot of times you would be able to see if there was a little. And then I forgot. I do the command DI. And that's like a distance, so it can check for me. So I'll connect to check to, I'm checking on the front line, and then I'll do a O-snap to the side line, and then I can see that if I was off any, it would tell me right here, and it's not off. And then if you double click your rolling wheel, then it'll put you back to your zoom extents. You can also type the command ZE for zoom extents, and it also gets, you know, to where you've drawn. So I normally zoom out a little bit. Alright, so homes were most of our drawings done. Insert is if we want to insert a symbol. We want to, typically like the block that I was going to bring in an AutoCAD block, you're going to use it here. And we also attach pictures. So if I wanted to maybe make a snippet of the vicinity map, I could bring that in as a picture. So those are some of the good things, you know, things that I do with insert. Alright, annotates typically where we do our text. And they've already predetermined, so they've got a bunch of labels over here. So you could label surfaces, figures, parcels, and I'm going to go all the way down to line and curves. And then I'm going to add line and curve labels. And what comes up, it's got line and curves, is single line segment. So in other words, it'll label that. But I want to do bearing, because it's got slope only. I want to do bearing over distance. And then I'm going to hit, you've got to hit the word add, and then you've got to click the line. And so it comes in really huge and not to the precision we want. In other words, we only want it to do 2 decimal places, and we typically only want this to the nearest second. So we can change them all in one spot and it'll load it. So I'm going to go, now I noticed on the, if you got the 2021 version in class, that this little, looks like a pencil with a monitor, is now like a pencil with a paintbrush. But you're going to click right in the pencil. And I'm going to look at, so they've got some information, so I'll just kind of, information's not much. General just kind of tells you what layer, you know, it put it on. Layout is where we can change the text height. So typically on it, I set my text at 0.10. So 0.10. Doesn't matter the scale, it'll go up and down with when you change scales. That's why I don't suggest ever exploding anything and then manually changing it. So when you go into, right now it's on bearing, I'm going to click in here, and you've got to specify a number. So I'm just going to put 0.1. You're not going to see it change yet until I do a little more. Then under the content, so I'm under text still, in content, click in the button. So when I click in here, it gives me the 3 little dots. That's where I can edit the formula. So what I was doing, right now it's got grade check up there. What I was doing, it was going down and going to overall segment direction, changing it to 1 second, hitting OK, and it didn't change, and hitting apply, and it didn't change nothing but the height. That's because, and I kept doing that and I was getting aggravated. So every 10 years AutoCAD does a big revamp. I noticed this year, or last year, the 2020 version, they didn't do a big revamp. So we've been lucky that since 2010 they've got such a good product, they haven't made much changes to it. So I've got to click to where I get the little 3 dots. And the first thing I do is I'm going to delete that formula altogether. Now, it automatically picked up that it's a general segment direction. Before, when I just came in there, before I deleted it, it said slope. So I now have got to go to the precision and click where it lets you double down in 1 second. Now don't hit OK, because if you hit OK and you didn't put the formula back in, it's going to come out blank. So you've got to add your formula back in, and that's that little arrow over button right here at the top. Hit OK, apply. Now it changed all of my bearings. They're down, and they're manageable. Everything looks good. So now I need to do the distances. So go into the component name for, instead of bearing, I want to change the distance. Again, change your text type to 0.1. 0.1 normally works with everything, and I'll show you how it, when we change the scale, it goes up and down. So I'm going to hit 0.1, and then I'm going to hit apply. And then you're not going to see anything yet. And then I'm going to go into the content, and I'm going to click the 3 little dots. I deleted the formula all but the foot mark. And when I did, it already knew that it was a general segment direction. If you accidentally delete the foot mark, I'll show you how we can put it back in. So precision, we want to change that to 2 decimals, 0.02 or 0.01. Add your formula back in, and then right outside the, I guess that's the greater than sign or less than sign, I guess that's less than, you're going to put just the foot mark, which is, above the question mark on your keypad, on your, and put the foot mark. Hit OK and apply. So now we've got everything kind of changed down. Looks good. So I'm going to OK that, and I'm good. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the adjoiners in. So, well, I'm going to do a text to put my lot number in before I finish. So typically I don't use multi-line text. I don't, because it kind of constricts me. I type the word D, T-E-X-T, all one word. It's called D text. I hit enter, and then I'm just going to kind of put it right inside the property. Text height typically should be, if it's a 1 to 30 scale, it should be on a 3. So it's a factor of what the scale is. If it's a 1 to 40 scale, you'd want it a 4. If it's a 1 to 50 scale, you don't want it on a 5. If you get something too small, they can't read it. They're going to turn it back in. So I'm going to put it on a 3. My rotation angle, I'm going to do 0. right now. And I'm going to type 10. You'll have to hit enter and enter again, and you've got your lot 10. And then I typically, if you look at my example, I put circles around the lot numbers. So I typically put a double circle around these, and then I put a circle around there with the dash lines for joiners. So I'm going to do a circle. So I typically, instead of looking where the circle is, and I'm on the annotate, I typically know what most of, what a circle is. Whatever, if you'll start typing, it'll come up. So if I hit C, circle is the first thing that comes up. So I'm going to do a circle and just make it where it looks good. It's not a, I don't actually make a certain size for this one. And then you can actually hit offset. So again, instead of me looking through all of this and I think this is offset, I will type O and offset pops up for me and I can click it. So I'm going to be teaching you some keyboard commands as we're doing this to make it faster for you. I would offset it maybe 0.5 and we'll see how it looks. Nope. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to do 1. Now what happens is I get something set up, and then the next time I'll just copy that and I copy and paste a lot and then actually modify it because it's easy to modify. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and go to a joiners. So I'm going to go, and the joiners are behind us. So if this is, let me show you the scale. So I'm down here at the bottom. If I click and went to a 1 to 60 scale, I want you to notice what happens to the text. The ones that were automatically put in, they adjusted as well. So if I went to 50, this didn't change. And back to 30. So I'm just kind of showing you that if you explode that, then it's not going to adjust up and down with your scale. So that's why I try not to explode anything. Alright, so I'm going to put in the joiners. I'm going to show you a couple of ways to put in the joiners. So I'm looking, the joiner to the left would be that lot 11. If this is a 1 to 30 scale, we're going to type LT scale. It's called line type scale. LT SAL, and it comes up LTS. LTS or line type scale. This line type scale is set up for 1. I typically set it up for half of what my drawing is. So if my scale is 1 inch equals 30, then my line type scale needs to be 15. And I'll show you what that means in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and set my LT scale to 50. LTS or LT scale. So there's a couple of ways you can get to it. So I'm going to I'm going to go ahead and make a joiners, my active layer, and I just double click because then, alright, so you can put it in by bearing and distance. I can go line, create a line by bearing. Okay, and so I'm wanting to go in quadrant 4 because that bearing is south 7750.02, but that's if you're looking this direction. So I'm going to go quadrant 4, 77.50.02, and it's 75 feet. And I'm going to go ahead and do the whole back of the lot. And it looks like that. So now I've got one side in. We don't have to label these for bearing and distances. We only have to label our property. So to get the other side, I can just hit C, O for copy, and I can copy this one. And I usually click, you know, if you click here, then you can't put it on that side. If I click here, I can put it there. So since this is all the same bearing, I could copy. So it's nice when there's no curves. It's actually the same bearing. Then I can copy it in and just change the symbol instead of having to put a line by direction. So copy if it's the same bearing. If it's not, you're going to have to put it in line by direction. Alright, so that's good. Actually, all of lot 46 is behind them, but somewhere in here is like a lot line that goes for 46 that goes up. And then, so actually, and right around in here on the 75, there's a distance that goes up. So you have two options for that. When it's not for surveying, it's just for looks, because we're not going to be coming off anything but our property. A lot of times I will take my scale out and kind of scale in how to get to, just to kind of put that adjoining property in. You can pull up the plat, but the plats are not going to match. Their bearings are. And I'll show you all that in class. But the plats don't match. One was done probably 25 years ago. Even though they're the same property line, they don't have the same bearing. There's usually some differences off. All instruments are different, so even though we know they're the same line and they hadn't changed, when they recorded the plat 30 years ago, it might have been a different, they might have had it south 79 degrees. I can pull it up. I'm going to be looking the one that has 46 on it. So I'm going to go to the Register of Deeds real quick, and I'll explain what I'm doing. ccrod.org. Of course, you've got a quick links to that. Search records, acknowledge disclaimer, imaging, and I'm gonna pull up plat book, and I'm looking at my plat. That would be 49. Oh no, this one is 54. 54, page 23. And that is lot 46. So it looks like it doesn't give you what the distance is over, because they don't reference. They do 46. Oh, and then their 93. They actually have it referenced to, and that's that on the plat. That's the back of lot 8. So they actually reference that corner. So if I needed to put it in, I could. I would still have to pull up that lot 93 to find out where 46 starts. So if I'm looking at that bearing, it's north 73 degrees, and it looks like 35 minutes. for that bearing. 7333. I'd have to print it on a bigger one. So 7333, and our plat has 775002. So even though this line has not changed, it's just how they label the bearings when they record it. We've got to, they probably came off an old survey to get theirs, and 4D did the control from GPS. So they've put some control corners in, but that explains that we could actually try to put it in that way, or I could kind of scale over and then come in on this line. This looks like a north east 1 degree 34 seconds. It's kind of hard to tell. So this is what we can do. I can go into CAD, and this is just for looks. I got my scale out. I'm going to put my scale on my drawing, and it looks like 46 is about 20 feet over. If you wanted to, go in and pull both plats up and measure down and figure out exactly, you can do that. But just for the sake of this, and it's just for a visual represent it visually, and doesn't have to be done exactly, we're gonna just scale over 20 feet, and then we're gonna do a bearing on that. I'm going to do a bearing for so I'm going to do that 1 degree. I'm just going to write this on my plat. So I'm going to do north 1 degree, looks like 34 minutes. Here's my plus. 134. 1 degree 34 minutes east. And now we don't have to go the whole 177 feet. If you come up about twice your scale size to draw it in, if it's close and it's 60, 70 feet, yeah, I would put it in. But if it's going to run off your paper, I would just put in I typically put in at least my scale plus half. So my scale's 30, and then plus half my scale again, which would be 45 feet. And then we can come down the 155, and then I'm going to put the other side in, which would be, it's going to be northwest. Looks like 12 degrees 46 minutes east, and it's 97 feet. So again, I'll put in 45. That'll be plenty just to get it to look. So I'll show you the easiest way to, so I want to scale down the 20 feet to get to where I want to start and put the bearing in. Typically, I do a cipher circle, and I'll do a circle of 20 feet. That way now I can do a line by bearing, and I can get where this intersects and go that way, and then I'll get rid of my circle. So I'm going to do line and curves, create a line and curve by bearing. Now I need to look down here. Your O snaps are across the bottom. So you can turn the O snaps on and off by F3. And so I do that a lot. And I'm going to click in here, and we want to put in import point, and then this time I'm going to put intersection or apparent intersection. Either one I think will work. I'm going to take node off because node would be a point. So I've got intersection and endpoint. And then I'll take the intersection back off when we get through. So I'm going to so if you notice when I hover over there, it's got it. And this one is quadrant 1, 1 degree, so it's 1.34, nothing else. So that's northeast, so I put it in quadrant 1, and when I punch the bearing is 1.34. So that's 1 degree, 34 minutes. And my distance, I'm just going to put in 45. Alright, so of course that's plenty for us to kind of look. Now I'm going to come down from here and do a circle of that 155, because remember I looked on that plat and there's 100, they have 155 feet. Oh, 155 feet. So the main reason that I'm just putting this in and not figuring out, if it would have came right in the middle of my lot, then yes, I would have pulled up the plat and I would put it in, reference it off the plat. But because all of this is one adjoiner and I just want it to aesthetically kind of look right, I'm going to go ahead and I just scaled my first distance off. So again, I'm going to go line, create a line by bearing. This one is quadrant 4. It's 12. And then I put a decimal point where the degrees is 46, because it's 46 minutes and 45 feet. So that's what it looks like. And I've got that. So I've kind of got what that looks like. Alright, so if you look on your plat, and I'm looking at Knowles on Cliffdale, I can actually see that this bearing is the same as my bearing for our lot, and this right here is the exact same. But when you get across the street, it changes a little bit. So we're going to have to fix this right away in a minute. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you can put it in line by direction, or line by bearing. So that would be quadrant 4, 77, 50, 02. And I'm going to go ahead and do the 75 feet. I typically do these 75 because sometimes where a contractor's been, where they've cleared the lot, they've tore out half these irons. So I try to give as many, when I'm getting my stake out, I try to put as many where I know a property corner is, like this one, this one. If I'd stopped at 1.5, that wouldn't quite get me to a property corner, and if I can do that and put it in and make it work, I do. So this one now is on the adjoiner, so I'm going to show you how I typically change to put it on the layer I want it on. I click on the drawing. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can click, right click, and hit properties, and you can change it right here from adjoiners, and we're going to put that on the right away. So I'm going to scroll down till I get right away. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to escape once I got it highlighted. I could have also went, and let's say I'm just going to click this one. I could go right here and change it right there really quick, and then hit escape to get out of that. Also, another thing, if I've got something already on that layer, a lot of times I do that little paintbrush, match properties. So match properties is, I'm going to change that blue line and I want it to look like the white line. So I'll choose the white line and then click the blue line. And then it matched it. So that's a couple ways you can do it. Now, again, remember how I just said we're not labeling this with bearing and distances, so I don't have to go clockwise. So if I just want to get the same distance and bearing, I can just copy. So CO is copy. Copy that line. Now I'll let it click to the endpoint so then I can put it on the other side here. So that's one way. You can do it by bearings if you're more comfortable with doing it by bearings. You could also do it by doing a line by angle and going 180. So there's a couple of ways to do that. So now I've got our lot 10 in. I'm going to actually want to start putting a little bit of text on. So if the subdivision is recorded on the same lot, like on the same plat, all I'd have to do is do the lot number and then dash it in. If it's recorded like this one, lot 9 and 11 are both on this recorded map, all I have to do is put a lot 9 in and maybe dash that circle and then do 11 and dash that circle. So what I'll typically do is I'll just hit copy, and I'm going to copy 10, and I'm going to copy the outside circle, and I'm going to copy it here, and then what I'll do is I'll change that number to say 11. Okay, so I got that. Now if you double click, you can start typing. So I can change that to an 11 and then click out. And then I can double click and change that one to a 9. Now because that was 2 numbers and this was 1, I'm probably going to have to recenter that. Now if you notice, they're on the pink layer, which is my property. So I'm going to go ahead and match the properties. So I'm going to match properties, make my line dash, and change the text so it looks like that. So the lot behind it, we've got to put a little more information in it, but I am going to go ahead and copy and put the lot number up here. So that's 46. And of course I used the one that was single, so it didn't. So all I'm doing is when I clicked on it, what I did is I double clicked. To move it, I hit M for move. So I click. A lot of times I'll go ahead and say M for move and click move, or I'll say move here. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. So, I mean, if there's a way it's easier for you to get to. Now I want to text in the information about the Village Hills Section 2 and Plat Book. Part 1, Plat Book 54, page 23, that was on the plat. So I'm going to type dtext, enter. I want to do C for center. So right now it's justified for left, no justified. So I want to type the word C for center, and then I'm going to put the text right below here. Now I don't want it 3 because I don't want it real big. I want to do it about 80% of what 3 would be. So I'd say that's maybe 3.2. So no, 2.4. I'm going to go 2.4 if it's wrong, and I can scale it up or scale it down by 0 is good. So I'm going to start texting or typing. So this is, we type usually in all capital letters. So it's Village Hill, A-G-E, Hill, Hills, and then I hit enter, so to put the next one down. Section 2, and it's spelled T-O-W. Part 1, and the last thing is PB for plat book 54, comma, PB or page 23. Now if you notice, this does spell check, so it's going to put a, if you spelled something wrong, it's going to put a little dashed line in there that you spelled it wrong. Hit enter and enter twice, and that gets you back out. That's the perfect size for this. So all my joiners are labeled. Alright, so what about labeling the road down here? Hadn't finished getting the road in, so let's go ahead and get the road in. So across the street, so if I'm looking at lot 10, lot 9 is 75, lot 8 is 74.61. I'm looking at the plats. I'll show you what I'm looking at. So I'm going to actually copy, here's 10, so we've got this point in, but I want to actually get all the way down to right here. That way that I can come across and come back and figure out where this curve starts at on this side. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get my calculator real quick, and I'm going to put those two numbers in so I can add it in. Okay, so then if I want to put that last line in, that'll be 74.61 plus 14.95. Gives me 89.56. Alright, so what I'm going to do is to get that, I'm not going to do by bearing. You can do by bearing. Well, I'll go ahead and do it by bearing. Create a line by bearing. And we're still going, that's going quadrant 2, 77, 50, 02. But this time I want to go all the way out where I know that curve starts at, to where I can copy across the street. So we would need to put in 89.56. Alright, so now I can copy, I can offset. So if you look at the actual road name, the road name is down in front of like lot 15. It's Hickory Knolls Road, 50-foot public right-of-way. So that's the invisible line. So I'm going to offset this line 50 feet to get the other side in. So I'm going to hit O for offset, and my number is going to be 50. You will pick the line, and then it's asking you what side do you want to put it. I want to put it on the bottom side, so I'm going to left click here. So I offset. If you accidentally click and it goes up, just erase it and come back down. Now, it said to the start of that curve, it's a total of 250.56 feet. So I'm looking that total distance that starts in front of lot 104 and goes all the way down to the curve starts coming around that other road for Shady Knoll Lane, which is 101. So again, a quick way of changing that distance is doing line and curve, create a line, and we're going to do extension. So I want to click here, and then I'm going to hit, you can just click on the word total, and then type in your 250.56. So if you don't hit total, and see, now you can see that the curve starts. If I'm looking at my plat, that's my curve starts right in here. So if you don't, if I hit LI for list to look at that, if you wouldn't have hit total, it would have actually took and added 250 feet to your line. You want to hit total to get the whole distance. Alright, so I need to match properties. And I am going to actually trim this off in just a minute, so I'll show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a line, and I'm going to click from here, and then I don't want to do input point here. I want perpendicular because I want to make a line straight over here. So a couple of ways you can do it. You can hit shift right click and do perpendicular, and then that'll come in at a 90, and then hit enter. So when I trim that back, then I can just get rid of these. So that's kind of how I do line point. So if you know your O-snap, you can put perpendicular there, and it is what it's going to come in at 90. So you want everything squared, nice and neat, and looks good. Alright, so this next one doesn't. So you actually have a curve there, and you would have to look at the curve table to see what that curve is. And that's curve 93. So I'm going to look at my curve table, and curve 93 tells me it's a 25-foot right-of-way, and the distance is 39.27 feet. So I'm going to go to line and curves, create a curve, and this time it's going to be from the end of an object, or end of an object. Alright, so click here. Now, it's going to be a radius. If we want it to go clockwise, we would put in 25, but since this is going counterclockwise, I'm going to put in a minus 25. You don't have to be degrees because the radius is a distance. So I'm going to say a negative 25. And then you've got to click length and type in 39.27. And that's what it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and match properties. And I'm going to get off that adjoiner layer since I'm through with that. I might make me a layer called text. So I'm going to do a new one called TXT, so we can do some of our text in there. I'm going to use red. And it needs to be continuous. I don't think it'll make a dash line, but it may. So I'm going to do continuous. And we're going to make a layer easement while I'm in here as well. And that would be new layer. Type E-A-S-E-M-E-N-T. That's an easement. So we've got a drainage easement on our property that I'm going to want to put in next. So easement. Typically I make my easement green. color 3, and I make the line type a hidden 2. We do not have a choice of a hidden 2, we just have a hidden. So you can go to load. Don't choose any of these ACAD ones. They don't come in as good. So you want to scroll down and you can use any of these. So if it's already loaded, it'll tell you it's loaded. But you see you got a bunch of choices, fences. So I'm going to look and I'm going to load in the hidden 2 one with the 0.5x. So hit OK. And then now you have to find it in here to set it current. So we just loaded it in. Alright, so I'm going to set my text current right now for a minute. And I'm going to text in the information for Knowles on Cliffdale. What the road name is. I'm going to text all of that in. So I'm going to put in, so I'm going to hit detext. Now, and I'm going to hit C for center because it automatically comes, well, it's still set for center, so good. I'm going to hit center. Now, I want it to kind of come in the way the road is. So I'm going to click about right here. And then for my road, for my text height, I'm going to leave 2.4. So I'm not going to change anything on it. But I am going to change the rotation. So what I'm doing is kind of dragging out about that looks like it's level. And I'll start typing. So I'm going to do, it's spelled Hickory. Hickory Knoll Road. And I'm spelling it just how they have it. I'm going to do enter. It's 50 foot. They've got R/W. And then they have public street. I'm going to hit enter. Alright, so that just is my text name. Typically, I will make this italic. So I can go up here, and so I'm actually in annotate. There is standards what's set, but I could manage text styles and maybe create one. So I could, looks like there is an italic one. I'm going to do italic, height 3, set current. And close. Okay, so it's got it. So let's see what happens. I'm just going to detext something again, and I'm not going to change. I'm just going to do one word. I'm going to leave the rotation the way it is. I'm just going to put 1. And of course you can see it's kind of italic now. So now I can match properties. And it should match it without having to text it all in. And it did. So it kind of made this italic. That's just my preference. They've got theirs a little thicker, so I do. And then I just move it. If you need to rotate it, you can hit RO for rotate. If it didn't quite come in, it came in at 0, you can rotate it. And rotating is RO. And you can rotate it either way. Just if you want to do straight, or I typically let it come in at 0 and then I'll kind of rotate it to to look. Alright, so I need to get this drainage easement in and labeled. So I'm going to go back to annotate, and I'm going to get out of that italic and go back to my standard, because I don't want the drainage easement on that. So we pulled up the plat and we scaled it, but actually typically when they say a 20-foot drainage, it's usually 10 feet each side. You'll have some that might be, I've seen 15, I've seen 30. I'm going to hit O for offset. So let's see if I go to home and take my text layer, and let's set easement as my current one. And then let's see if I offset it 10 feet onto our property and 10 feet onto lot 9, if it keeps the formatting for, typically it'll keep the formatting for this property and not put it on easement. You would have to, so let's just see. So I hit, of course, again, you can hit up here for offset, or you can hit O for offset. And I'm going to do 10, and it kept, and so it kept it. So I'm going to click these two, so I select both of them, and when I do, I'm going to click down on the property and scroll up till I find easement, because it's just right there. And once I do, I can escape, and I've got it changed that quick. So I need to put in some text and call that a 20-foot drainage easement. You want to spell it out just the way they have it. They've got an arrow into it, but typically I'm going to type dtext again. I've got center already justified, so I'm going to keep with that. I'm going to leave my height at 2.4, but I'm going to let the rotation be at 0, and then I'll rotate it back. So I'm going to type in 20-foot drainage, and then below it I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to type easement. And I entered twice to get out of it. So now I can just bring it over. Oh, I'm gonna hit M for move, and I'm gonna move it. And then I'm gonna kind of rotate it. So I'm gonna hit RO for rotate. And I'm gonna rotate it up. So some of the commands that you learned in the basic AutoCAD are some of these. Right here's rotate. If it's easier for you to get rotate, move, copy, and by all means they're right there. If you don't see it, if you scroll down, there's a bunch of others down here. It's just typically I can type CO or C for circle easier than I can finding the circle up here. Alright, so we're off to a good start. So I've got an easement labeled, I have the joiners labeled, I have the right-of-way, but I don't have like the edge of pavement. And typically the edge of pavement, if it's a 50-foot right-of-way, I actually make a layer called centerline, but in the end I'll want to turn that centerline off. So typically I'll do a center line, so I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to call it CL. New layer, CL, and it's typically red. And for center line, there's a center 2, so I'm going to go to the line type. And here it is, center 2. And I don't have to make it the current one, but I'm going ahead and make it current. So to get to the center of this road is just half of what your right-of-way is. So I'm going to offset 25. And I'm going to offset, because actually this road continues on. So I'm offset all three of these 25. Now I need to make that my centerline layer. I typically will change one. So I'm going to click down. And right now it's got right away. I'm going to change it to centerline. Escape. And then I'm going to match properties, which is the little paintbrush. So I want this pink and the right of way to be the red. So I'm going to choose red as the source. Alright. So the reason I put that in, because typically pavement in a subdivision, typically our pavements are 27 feet back to back. So I can say if I've got 25 here, so when I'm saying 27 feet, that's, if we split that in two, that's 13 and a half down and 13 and a half to the top. So I can't do the 13 and a half down because we've got a right of way, so why not figure out what's left over out of the 25? If I need to come 13 and a half feet this way, what if I come from the right of way? It's 25 feet and I subtract the 13.5. I'm left with 11 and a half feet. So I actually can offset all of the right of way, this down 11 and a half feet to get the edge of pavement here, and then I can offset this up the 11 and a half and get the edge of pavement in here. Typically all of our major roads or in subdivisions, DOT requires, and so does City of Fayetteville, they require 27 feet back to back. And so that's what I'm going to put in. We can make a layer called EP for edge of pavement. You can spell it out, EDGE of pavement. I don't typically do anything special. I just normally do this one white, and it is continuous. I'm not going to make it current because right now when I offset it, it's going to keep the source scene from what I'm offset. So I'm going to offset 11.5. and I'll show you how we can check. So I'm going to come down, offset all of these, offset all of these. I'm going to go ahead, you can try to change them all at one time. So I could click here, here, here. And now I don't have that property viewer. It's because now I've got more than one item selected. In other words, if they would have all been yellow, it would have done it, but since we have the one pink, you can't do it that way. You would have to go at it a different way. So I'm just going to click and change the first one to my edge of pavement. And then I'm going to copy. Now remember we were talking about the manhole, or we were talking about the sewer. I am going to actually put the sewer on this side, and I'm going to put it at 5.75. So this is going to be a little different. I've made a special line type for that one, and I've had some issues with the CAD. We can try to make it, and we'll see how it comes out. So I'll get to that a little later on. So I've actually got, I can make a layer called water. New layer, water. Usually use the light blue, which is that cyan, which is number 4, and I usually make it continuous. And then we're going to do another one for sewer, and I usually use red for that, and I'm going to go continuous right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to set a special line type to go in for that. Alright, so typically water and sewer have to be 10 feet apart. If I looked on that plan and the plan said the manhole, and usually the manhole is in the center of the water main, was 5.75 feet, I'm going to hit O for offset. I'm going to type 5.75. Water, typically I put on the plans how far it is from the center line. I didn't see a note on their plans. I'm going to click all 3 of these really quick because they're all the same, and I'm going to change them to sewer. And then the water, if this is 5.75, I'm not positive. I would call PwC and maybe verify where their water is. But if I tried to maybe scale it off the plans, I think we had gotten around 6 feet. So I'm going to hit 6. And I can verify it. And these are going to be, so if it would have been 5 feet, then we would just offset 5. This is going to be my water. Alright, so it looks like we're getting most of our line work done and labeling it as we go along. I don't typically, well, I might just put like a note, edge of pavement, a little small right here. Since I don't, so I'll do a D text, and I'm going to make this one a little smaller. You can leave it at 2.4, and then I'm going to label it with the road, and I'm going to say edge of pavement, P-A-V-E-M-E-N-T, it's pavement, and hit enter. And then I'm going to scale it down just a tiny bit. So typically when I hit SC for scale, if I want to go lower, so if I want, it's going to ask, right now it's asking me the base point, so I'm just going to click in here. If I want it to go smaller, it's kind of hard to scale it down smaller. I'll do, if I want it to be 75% of what that was, I would type in 0.75. So I'll kind of bring it down either by 0.80 or 0.75 a lot of times. We don't want to get too small because if they can't read it, then they will deny it. So actually I want to actually put some text in for the water and the sewer. So if I would look at the water and sewer plans, I know that they're an 8-inch water and an 8-inch sewer. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this edge of pavement, and I'm going to copy it here. I'm going to take my O-snap off for a minute. So I normally will do F3 to turn them off. So it said O-snaps are off because I don't want it to. And then I'll turn them back on when I get done. So I'm going to go ahead and move it out of the way so it doesn't look so busy. and then I'm going to and then double click and call it existing 8, and then I do the inches. Water main. I might just call it water, and we can, I'm going to say water main. I'm going to spell it out. And I'm going to do the same thing here and call this an existing 8-inch sewer. And if I want to match this to my sewer layer, I'm going to hit the little paintbrush, and that just puts that text on the same layer, and it was the same color so you couldn't tell. And then I'm going to match to the blue. Alright, so right now I'm on centerline layer, and I'm going to go ahead and get out and go back into text for a minute. So looking good so far, but I kind of need to know what the envelope is that I can put a house in here. I didn't have an envelope on the example that I put in. Here's the plans, and there's where I got the 8-inch sewer. Actually, I wrote it was 8-inch SDR 26 pipe, and then water. There's a building envelope. So we are going to want to put in water and sewer lateral. So as you can see, I've got my existing water in, my sewer in, but I don't have these W's. Actually, I put a dash line in there. And then I've got bearings and distances labeled. I've got the adjoiners labeled, so I'm still going to need a north there and a couple of other things. So I want to put the setback line where my house needs to set. So when we looked up the zoning for this, you should have looked up the zoning, and I think it's SF6. It's SF10, excuse me. It's SF10. So there's a couple of things with that. With the SF10, the setbacks were 30 from the front. I think you had 10 on the side, and maybe if it was a 2-story it would be more, and 35 for the rear. So you had to look at SF10 in the GIS, and then went to City of Fayetteville, that UDO ordinance, and pull it up. But here's the difference. If a subdivision is labeled with the words 0 lot line development, 0 lot line, any lot lines or any sides that are recorded in this simultaneously, whether it's side or rear, especially these right through in here, you can build up to 5 foot of the property line. 0 lot lines means you can actually build up to the lot line, but you've got to keep a maintenance easement between you and the adjoiners. So typically, if it's 0 lot line, we'll go 5 foot up to the line. So you want to look at your plat next, because the plat lets them build more on the lot than typically would be allowed. So of course this has to be 10 because you can't go into easement. This side would be 5, the front would be 30, and the rear, because these are facing an existing subdivision, it has to be 35. So I don't have a choice. But if it's any of these, so for like this lot 70, you still have 30 on the front, but you can be as close to 5 feet of any of these other lots, even in the back, if they're all recorded together. When it abuts a different subdivision, then you have to comply with the restrictions. So remember that look and see if it's zero lot line, and typically all the newer ones are. So you would just check and see what your recorded plat says. So I want to make a setback line. So I haven't. I don't know if I made one. Let me look. Nope. So I'm going to make a layer. And once we've got this, then the next time you start another drawing, you can just start from this one, open it up, and save it as the new drawing that you want it, and you'll have all your settings right. So this is setback. I typically use this cyan color as well. And then I typically use like a dash dot. So let me see if I see a dash dot. I do not. So I'm going to go into load. And there's one called a dash dot, and I want the 2. It's the one that has the 0.5x. So once you load it, just hit OK, and then now find where it loaded it. And I'm not going to set it as current because it's going to put it on the text layer, and then I can trim it and set it up. Alright, so typically the easiest way to do these is I'm going to hit O for offset, and I've got to come 30 feet off the front right away. You saw one that said it had to be 55 off the center of the road if it was a private street, so you saw a couple of different ones. This is a public, so we can do 30 from this invisible right away. So of course from the street it looks like it's set back farther. So 30. Now we can't go 5 here because it would be in the easement, and we can't put anything in the easement. So I'm going to go 5 to the inside, and then I've got to have 35 on the back. So that kind of gives me the envelope. Before I start trimming these lines, I want to make sure to put them on that setback line. That way I don't accidentally trim something I don't need to trim. So I'm going to click my 3 lines that are on the inside, which are the setback lines, and I'm going to change that to setback. Alright, so I can see that I'm going to have to trim this line back to the green. So I'm going to hit TR for trim, choose the green line, and then hit enter. So you only have to choose that one to begin with, and then as you can see I can trim it back. If you accidentally trim it the wrong way, you can just hit undo. Don't hit undo a lot. I'm going to do a file save as because I have not saved at all. So I'm going to hit file save. And this is going to be my lot 10. And I'm putting KOC, Knowles on Cliffdale. And that's going to be under my documents. So I just wanted to save it because I had not, I don't think, saved it all. Alright, so for me to do these two, we're going to trim. So I'm going to choose both lines. And I want to trim this part back and this part in. So now this is 10 feet and this is 30, and we can check it. It's easier for me to do F for fillet, and I leave my radius at 0, and I click this line, and it automatically kind of forces them to close. So now there's my setback line. I'm not going to label that because I'm going to actually put that in my legend. The line, same with the right of way, that'll be in my legend. So, and same with the joiner. So I'm not going to label actually what the line is. Easement slate is labeled because we needed to tell what the width of it is. But for the line type, I'll put that in. So it looks like we've got a good start. I'm going to actually bring my house in. So I want to do my house. I want to put the house in here, and typically we want to center the house on the lot. And when I say center on the lot, I mean the whole entire lot, not just the envelope. So I'll show you how to put a house in, and the easiest way for me to put it in for you, and then we could bring it over and rotate it. Alright, so you want to print your house plan if you have it, and the house plan is right here. I typically print it out so that I can scan it in. I got it scanned in the So I'm going to try to get all the elements today, and then I'll do a second part to the video which then shows you how to do the vicinity map and edit and change and put in a north arrow and some other stuff. So that'll do the second part. So I'm printed this out, and I'm going to start putting this in my CAD. So I normally put the house over here to the side, and the first thing I turn on is the F8, which is an ortho command line. That way when I start drawing lines, if I do L for line, then it kind of snaps in and doesn't let me go but left and up and down, left and right. I'm going to go ahead and just maybe make a house layer. And it doesn't matter what color you use. I'm going to use it's a color 21, which is some type of mixture. I think it's like a salmon. And I'm going to set that continuous. I'm going to set that current. Alright, so I'm going to start at the front porch, the far left side. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to do, I just hit L for line. So you could just go create a line, just hit the word line, or you can type L and then hit line. And then I'm dragging, because I want to drag to the length. I want to drive to the left, and I need the house, the front of the covered porch is 15 feet. So I'm going to type 15. And you probably remember that from CAD. And then the porch actually goes back 2 feet. It doesn't show because your covered porch, and I'm doing the outside of the covered porch. So the outside comes in 2 feet. So I'm going to type, so I'm going to go straight up and do 2. And then I need to draw the next line, which is the front of the house, and it's 17 feet. So I type 17. And then I'm going to come straight down because it's 2 feet to the front of the garage. And then remember, I said when you want to go to the whole, you want to put the whole distance in for the garage. So you don't want to put to the center. I want to go that whole 20 feet. And then it goes back 21 feet. And then I'm going to go to 16 feet, the back of the garage. And then if I add those two measurements, that's 5.78. I get actually 10 feet, so I told you wrong. So this is 10 feet. And then 36 across the back. And then I don't connect to, just go to the front. I'm going to go 27 plus 4. I'm going to go 31 feet. And then I'm going to zoom in and make sure that it closes. And I don't see any problems. You would be able to see if there was when you got that close to it. Alright, so there's my house. I typically go ahead and label my house now. So this dimension needs to be, so if I'm looking at the house, it is a total, you've got 36 plus 16. So this house is 52 feet wide. So from left to right, so that's the widest point. So if I look at the back, 16 and 36, or I add the front, which is the 20, the 17, and the 15, I should get 52. So that's going to kind of help me when I go over here to put it on the lot. Alright, so we want to label. So I'm going to go to Annotate. I want to add labels. I want to add line and curve labels. And we are going to do, this time, I just want a distance. So I'm going to change to distance only. And we're going to hit add. And then I'm going to click the house. Now, of course, they come in way too big. So I'm going to go ahead right now and go ahead and go in and change these. So I'm going to go in the little, looks like the pencil with the computer. I'm on layout. Now you don't have a choice for a distance on this one, so it actually is the bearing component. You want to take this down to 0.6. 0.06. I need to justify that. So the other ones are 0.1. So I want to bring these down to a 0.06. And then I want to go to the contents, and we're going to change where you get the 3 little dots. I'm going to delete the formula, all but the foot mark. General segment length, I want this to be just 2 decimal places. I go ahead and do 2 most of the time now. And hit OK, apply. So now that's more manageable. But it did put it on the outside. So now I'm going to have to rotate it to the inside. So apply and OK. So I'm going to go ahead and add. And wherever you click, that's where it's going to put it. So I'll show you how we can move them. Okay. So I want to put these on the inside because you don't want house lot dimensions on the outside because it gets in the way of some of our other text. So if you can click all of them at one time, and I would suggest doing that. Click them all. And say flip. Oh, it did. And then just hit escape. But now right here, so let's say I wanted to move that one. So you could slide the little label down. My O-snaps are off, so right now, but if you had your O-snaps on, you got to be careful because it's going to throw it down there. So I'm going to keep my O-snaps off, which is the F3. And you can move it. Alright, now right here, there's a little, like a little box. You can drag it. But look what happens. It makes that really, really, really big. That's an easy place to check that. That's what they call the drag state. So what I'm going to do is go into that distance only component again. And you see that word drag state. There is a text height. And it's going at 0.1. So you want to change that to 0.06 and hit apply, and it fixed it. I don't like that arrowhead. So I took the arrowhead off, so I went under arrowhead and put none. And so if you mess up, you can say reset label and it goes right back. So that's kind of cool. So I'm going to take my ortho off now, my F8 off. So that was kind of one of the problems that kept trying to go to my ortho. So I'm going to kind of pull it off to here. So I took ortho, the F8 off because it was, and then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And kind of drag it. So that looks a little better. Now I want to put this, lot inside my envelope. I want it perfectly centered. So the front of the house, either, both corners of the front of the house would be good. So if the width of my lot is 75 feet and the width of my house is 52. So I'm going to calculate 75 feet minus 52. That leaves me with 23 feet on both sides. But remember, now I've got to divide it by 2. So I can put it 11.5 feet off either side. And now typically that gives me a little bit of room. Typically we're not going to put it right on the 30-foot line, because what if there's a builder makes an error? So we typically put it at 31. So I'm going to make a line. I'm going to say, I'm going to hit O for offset, and I'm going to offset that front property line 31 feet. And then I'm going to offset this one 11.5. So I'm going to hit O for offset 11.5. And then what I'll do is just trim the front of the house back to the 11.5. So I'm going to hit TR for trim. And I'm going to trim to this line. And I'm going to trim this out. So now, I'll go ahead and read. So now if I can bring my house from here over to here, then I can rotate it along that line. I'm going to show you the best thing to do when you're doing this is group this house together. So type GROUP, group. I'm going to group everything. So now it's one entity. So I'm not having to pick everything. So I want to move it. And I want to move it from this corner here. So I need to turn my O-snaps back on. So O-snaps are right here. So you can turn them back on. Or I hit F3. And I want to bring it in and bring it right here. Alright, so still it's not on the same rotation. Do not eyeball this. We want to do this professionally. So I'm going to hit RO for rotate. And what do I want to rotate? You can click the house, or you could also just take P for previous. So I just chose that one. I'm going to hit rotate. And once it's selected, hit enter. Where's the base point? The base point's right here that we entered in. So it's actually got a couple of O-snaps on. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to take that intersection off and perpendicular off. So I'm just going to keep endpoint on right now. So my base point's going to be right here. So when you get here, it's asking you to kind of rotate it. I do R, so I click reference. So it's got rotate, specify rotation angle, or copy or reference. I hit reference. So it's wanting me to specify the reference angle. So what I'm going to choose is the same point we start with, again. So I'm going back to this point twice. Second point would be the end of the house. And then the new angle would be the end of the pink line. So, voila, there it is. That's funny. That didn't rotate with it. It still kept it straight up and down. So I'll have to ungroup that to fix that. So now that I've got it there, if I wanted to do, so now we've got to actually put some dimension labels. You want to do from one point, the closest point, and there's all of these are the same, from the corner of the house perpendicular to the lot. So I'm going to do 3 lines. I typically do 3. If there's some, this is really close, I might do it 2. So I'm going to do, let me go back, look, see what, I'm on house, so I'm going to leave it on house. I'm going to do a line, and I'm going to create my line, and I'm going to do one from here, and I want perpendicular to this line. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my O-snap perpendicular back on. And you wait till you see that perpendicular. And then I'm going to do one right in here. Well, I'm going to probably do all the way over here. That way I leave room in here to put the sewer laterals. Here, perpendicular. And then you want one from the corner of the house to this lot line. And perpendicular. Now, if I label those distance only, they should be the exact same distances. So I got 11.5, 11.5, and 31. I'm going to flip that 31, so I'm going to click it and flip it on top so that it's out of that. Alright, so I'm going to ungroup the house for a minute. So I hit UN and then it's spring and group, and I'm going to click the house. That way I can see if I can reset this label. That one looks good. I'm going to go back and then just kind of regroup that a little bit. So I normally will type in proposed house here. So I'll do dtext. I'm just going to leave the center here. I'll rotate it. Text height 2.4. I'm going to let the rotation angle, I'm going to leave it at that 348 because that's with the rotation of the road. And I'm going to hit PROP for house. And got that. Then the last thing I need to do is put my driveway in. So driveway, remember I was saying technically your driveway does not start at the corner of the house. It normally, they come in about 1 feet on each side. So normally they'll do like a 18-foot drive. So I'm going to hit O for offset. And I'm offset, oh, still has, needs to be 1 foot. And I'm going to extend that line. So I'm going to hit, I'm hitting that extend. It's right here. And I'm going to extend it to the edge of the pavement here. And then I'm going to trim it back so that it doesn't go into the house. Now, because it looks like the house, again, I'll do some text. I'll say proposed drive. Make sure your drive doesn't stop, that it stops at your edge of pavement, which is your white line. So I'm going to do dtext. And I'm rotating it. I'm going to leave it at 2.4. and then I'm going to rotate it kind of with the house, and I'm going to say I'm going to do PROP and then type drive and hit enter. If it doesn't rotate, it didn't quite rotate the way I want it, I hit RO for rotate. And I might scale it down a little bit so it's just I critique my work, so I'm kind of a stickler for attention to detail. I'm going to bring it down about 0.75 where it's not so big. Alright, so let's look at our drawing. Let's look at the sample site plan. And let's see what I've got. Alright, so we still got to do mapping elements, but you've got your right-of-way in, you've got your water line in, you've got your sewer line in, you've got your edge of pavement in, you got your house in, you got it labeled. We've got proposed drive, we've got bearings and distances, we've got adjoiners, so the only thing left would be mapping elements, and I'm going to make we've got our distances from the endpoint perpendicular. So you see some of these I had to pull on the outside because they wouldn't all fit on the inside, but you want to leave as much open on the plan. So we just need to do our water sewer laterals, and I think I'm going to do that, and I'm going to call it a night and upload this video, and then I'll pick up probably, so I'm not going to expect lot 10 done right now because I'll show you how to do the mapping elements, bringing in the north area, the vicinity map, a scale, and all that in the next series, but it shouldn't take as long. Alright, so I need to know where the water and sewer is. So typically they're in the center of the lot. I can look at the plans. Let me get rid of that plan. And lot 10. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I can't see which ones. I'd have to look on their legend to see which ones, and they're typically, looks like they're typically right there together. They're usually sometimes 18 inches apart. And they're 18 inches inside the right-of-way. So let me look and see which one's the circle and which one's the triangle, because they don't connect them to the lines. So I'm going to go out to my, so I'm just looking to see which one's on the left side and which one's on the right. Looks like probably, well, they got a water meter as a square. And their as-built cleanouts the circle, but that don't look like a, it looks like a triangle, but the circle is the cleanout and the square. So the sewer's on the left and the water's on the right. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. Alright, so typically it's in the center of the lot. We're going to put one, so I'm going to offset the center of the lot. If it's 75 feet, half of that is 37 and a half. So I'm going to hit an offset of 37 off. Now I didn't tell you this. If I accidentally got out of that command I was just in. If I want to go back in the same command, just hit enter again, and it takes you right back in that same command. So 37.5. Okay. And the clean out the sewer was on the left. So now I'm going to offset. If they're about 18 inches apart, I typically put mine 2 feet on each side. So I'm going to go with 2 feet on each side. So I'm going to offset one line 2. So I'm going to hit offset 2. And that will be my sewer. And then I'm going to offset this one 2 feet that way, and that'll be my water. So I'm going to erase the one in the middle because that was just centering it. I'm going to extend the sewer down to the sewer line, which is here. Hit enter. And I'm going to extend the water. So I'm going to hit enter again because that'll put me in extend again. Well, that didn't go there. Okay, there's my sewer. And just hit enter. Then I'm going to hit enter again. And I'm going to click the blue line and hit enter. And then I'm going to match my properties again. Now, typically I will do like a lateral line because I want these kind of dashed. So I'm going to trim it back at the house. And I'm going to write in, I'm going to make a layer called laterals. And I'm going to leave it the same color as the house. I'm just going to make it a hidden 2 line. Make it a dashed. So I can click here, here. So I just click both lines, and I'm going to change it right here. And I'm going to find laterals. And I've got my laterals. Now you want to put in a little symbol for the clean out, and it's typically 18 inches inside. So I'm going to type in 18 is 1.5 feet. Alright, so I want to put a symbol right here. And remember, it's a circle. So I'm going to hit C for circle. And I'm going to take intersection, apparent intersection. And I'm going to make a little circle. And then I need to do one. I'm not going to erase that line yet because I need to do one for the water meter. And the water meter is normally like a little square. So I go to Insert, Ribbon. There's the Insert tab on the or Insert a Block. This would be where we would get that AutoCAD template I put in there for you. More options. And there are some predetermined ones in here. It's catch basin. Even though it's a catch basin, that's a square for a water meter. Alright, we want to specify on screen the scale. It doesn't matter if you explode, but if you don't specify on screen, it's going to come in really, really small. It's going to come in on a, and we want it to come in, I think, I'm going to say 3, but it may be 30. So I'm going to do one. And I want the apparent intersection of the 2 lines, if it'll let me. Oh, it's wanting my scale factor already. So I'm going to type in, I'm going to type 30. Oh, and it threw it there. So yeah, it came in right, but it threw it down here. So my O snap's wrong. And it exploded it, and I did not want it to explode it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to group it. No, I'm not. I'm going to go back and hit enter. Or no, I'm going to go back and hit insert, more options, catch basin. I'm going to take explode off. I'm going to specify on screen, but I want it to go at the intersection, and it's automatically clicking to this end before I get a chance. I'm going to do 30, and I'm going to move it over. So you can move it from here over to and hit apparent intersection. And then if I wanted to rotate it a little bit to square it up, the center of this object is, if I hit shift right click the apparent intersection, say apparent intersection. Now I can kind of rotate it. I'm going to take those snap off for a minute because it's trying to click. So now I can get that off. My layers are on. They're on the right layer. We can type sewer cleanup, water, or water clean. This is sewer and water. Let's see what I have on the drawing. SS lateral and water lateral. That would be good enough, and then I'm saving it. So I'm copying this right over. Copy. I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to edit and type SS LAT for lateral and water. And we can put that in our legend. Alright, so this is a wrap for tonight. I'm going to hit save, and I will pick back here probably on Thursday, so this will not be due till probably next Tuesday night, for the ones that are trying to do, once because I doubt we'll finish up in class tomorrow.